afternoon, or good evening. Depending on when you're seeing this message, today, September 4th, 2020, I will be reflecting on the life and legacy of my father, Dominique Schillio. This eulogy was initially intended to be delivered during my father's funeral service, which was held on Friday, August 21st, 2020. Unfortunately, I was robbed of this opportunity, given that my father's wife, now widow, changed her mind 2 days before, texting me in her typical passive-aggressive fashion that after doing some thinking, she no longer wishes for there to be any eulogies delivered during my father's funeral, stating that instead it will be a simple mass led by the priest, and I quote, "the way Dominic would have loved it. Not the way your dad would have loved it, not the way your father would have loved it, the way Dominic would have loved it." I think that alone speaks for itself. Let's just say I had some choice words for her following our exchange, and then proceeded to cut off all communication with her. To not allow a man's firstborn son to deliver a final send-off to their father during a time of such pain and grief is truly unfathomable. Little does she know, I am just as stubborn and resilient as my father. I will absolutely not allow this callous, cold, and heartless woman to try to intimidate me and stop me from remembering my father, even if it means having to go to the unnecessarily great length of delivering it through social media. And believe me, I look forward to never having to directly contact or occupy the same space as this woman for as long as I live, now that my father is finally at peace. I will not be silenced, and I hope that this video will be able to make the rounds and find its way to all of my father's beloved friends and to all those who truly loved and cared for him. This eulogy is very raw and a real reflection of my father and our personal relationship. With that being said, let me begin. This is a speech I never thought I would have to write at 24 years of age, or ever for that matter, but yet here we are. My father, Dominique R. Schillio, was born on January 29th, 1969, and sadly passed away on Friday, August 14th, 2020. My dad was many things: a great son, a great brother, a great uncle, a great nephew, a great brother-in-law, a great husband, a great friend, but most importantly, a great father. He was not perfect, but who really is? He showered me with an unconditional amount of love throughout my childhood and most of my early adulthood. He also delivered me some of the most pain and disappointment I had ever experienced throughout my young adulthood and early 20s. Unfortunately, we had a very strained relationship these past few years after he remarried. There were several failed attempts on my part to swallow my pride to try to get our relationship back on track, but he could never just own up to his mistakes and acknowledge his hurtful actions towards me or my mother. The final straw for me was when I gave him an invitation to attend my college graduation, in which he initially accepted, but then later declined, stating, "You did not let me know far enough in advance." I was his firstborn child, and to receive that type of response, and not even a congratulatory text on the day of my graduation, for my once-in-a-lifetime moment, a moment I thought would make him prouder than proud, was a devastating blow. And you can't even imagine how deep the hurt was. From that moment on, I made a promise to myself that I was not going to open myself up to be hurt by my father anymore. And I had to remember to always keep my guard up around him. The father I knew from my childhood slowly faded and became somewhat of a distant memory. But nevertheless, we did try to always maintain some semblance of respect between one another when we met face to face following my graduation, as much as it may have killed us. Even if it became as cold as a handshake that I had to initiate in our last few encounters. But no matter how cold our relationship became, I could never erase the fact that he was a consistently great father to me throughout my childhood when I truly needed him the most. I cannot put a price on the memories we made together. It is because of him I have traveled to so many different parts of the world, and as a result have been exposed to so many different cultures and people. I am sure those travels played a huge role in why I am so open-minded and so quickly accepting and non-judgmental of people from all walks of life to this day. But we didn't even need to leave our backyard to make meaningful and long-lasting memories. It was the simple things like the bike rides, the barbecues, the holidays, the birthdays, the summer days at the beach, the long days at the park and pool, the rated R movies that I definitely shouldn't have been watching, and the list goes on and on. That meant the most to me. For that, I am eternally grateful to him because it is my childhood that has shaped me into the kind, loving, and empathetic human being that I continue to work so hard and striving to be each and every day. I poured my heart out to him on his bedside in his last few days at the hospital as I drowned in my tears, just letting him know how much I loved him, how much he meant to me, and reassuring him that my sister and I would make him proud, and that I would continue to guide and protect his little girl. Even though he was unconscious and the only thing keeping him going was the ventilator he was hooked up to, as sad as it is to say, I had not felt so close and vulnerable to my father in the past few years, more so than I did in that moment. I felt like I actually recognized him, without his new fancy pair of glasses on, or wearing some attire that didn't really match his personality. Like that one time he came to pick my sister and I up one weekend wearing a tight pair of dark purple pants. It took everything in me not to say something and call him out like, "New pants? Who this?" But I digress. My point is, I finally felt like I was getting a glimpse of the real man, in his purest form again. The same dad I would wake up to on those weekend mornings as a kid, the dad who would bear it all, shirtless and in nothing but a pair of underwear. It's a shame it took something as tragic as this to occur for me to finally feel the presence of the dad I once knew and admired so much throughout my childhood. I will always be my father's son, accepting the parts of him that were good, bad, and in between. And I will always carry a piece of him wherever I go. It was hard not to look up to him as a kid, and even as an adult, given he stood at a height of 6 feet and 6.5 inches after all. I guess it makes perfect sense now why we had such a hard time seeing eye to eye. I forgive and forgive him fully for his transgressions as a father before he passed, because I know in my heart how hard the boy from the French Caribbean island named Guadeloupe worked all his life to set out on his own to America in his early 20s and achieve all the dreams he set his mind to, with the support of his then girlfriend and soon-to-be loving wife, of course, my mother, Celie Schillio, who financially supported him for a whole year in this country while working 2 jobs, and soon thereafter married him to make it possible for him to attain his U.S. citizenship and go on to achieve great things. There aren't many women I know who would do that, just saying. Her support and his drive and determination made them an unstoppable team, helping make it possible for him to go on to become a successful banker in New York City, so that he could eventually move his then wife and newborn son, me, out of their tiny, cramped Brooklyn apartment into a big, beautiful home in the suburbs of Long Island, and give his then only son and down the line his beautiful daughter, his Clo-Clo, the life he never had but always dreamed of. This is how I choose to remember my father, and I will make sure to lead by his example and learn from his mistakes, so that I can be an even better father to my children one day. Although I know my heart will never truly heal from this ordeal, no matter how much time passes, one thing that is for sure is that the love and respect for the father of my childhood and the man he once was will forever and always live on in my heart. Thank you, and I love you, Daddy.